Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. I hope you're all doing well, drinking local beer, supporting local pubs, and just being great neighbors to one another. We've got a great show lined up for you today, and I can't wait to get into it, so let's get at it. Nice and quiet, slow down on the music. The year was 1976. And a young Michael Hancock landed in Canada for a job with Molson's. A graduate of mechanical engineering over in the UK, Hancock joined the brewery as the first energy and environmental engineer, thinking it would be just a short stint. Well, 10 years later, and a lot of experience gathered along the way, Hancock decided the brewing of beer interested him more than the engineering side of the business, and a course at the world-renowned Siebel Institute and a meeting with some Bavarian royalty kickstarted a new journey that Ontario beer drinkers would reap the rewards of for many years to come. Denison's Brewpub would open in Toronto in 1989. Yes, one of the first brewpubs in Ontario post-Prohibition, and one that ignited and inspired a new generation of brewers and businesses. It was located at 75 Victoria Avenue and consisted of 3 restaurants, which made up Denison's: Growler's Pub, Crazy Louie's, and Conchi Joe's. I love the name Crazy Louie's for a pub. It was here that Hancock developed a reputation for producing quality German-style beers in an era of predominantly British-style ales in Ontario. These included Denison's Weiss beer. I think it was called Denison's Weizen back then, but we'll ask Michael about that. And Denison's Dunkel, 2 beers that would define Hancock's brewing career and put him on the global brewing radar. That brewpub, Denison's, closed in 2003, but Hancock's story doesn't end there. Not at all. The Denison beers lived on, brewed on a contract basis at various breweries over the next 10 years, always under the watchful eye of Michael, who was involved every step of the way, stoically positioned over the mash tun with his rubber boots and overalls on. In 2014, Side Launch Brewing, Collingwood, Ontario, opened their doors with Hancock at the helm of the brew house. I think it got started in a garage in Cabbagetown, though, but we're going to find that out later on in the show. A Canadian Brewery of the Year title in 2016, and the introduction of some incredible brands Hancock recreated from the early days of Denison's had the beer community buzzing again. I've known Michael for many years, and he has had one hell of a career in beer. There are a few people in Canadian beer with 40 plus years of industry experience and stories that they can tell, and he is no doubt considered a true pioneer of the Canadian brewing industry. He has created legacy brands and inspired so many during that time, and he is here today to tell us all about it. But that record-long introduction has me thirsty. Hang tight while I take a sip of this delicious Vienna lager from Great Lakes Brewery, and we'll be right back with Michael Hancock, der Bräuer.
There appears to be only one line on this sheet. $50 for a case of Great Lakes Premium Lager. That's it? That's the ad? Okay. Cases of Great Lakes Premium Lager are only $50 every day of the year.
Mr. Hancock, welcome to the show. It is an extreme honor for me to have you here with us today. To shed some light on your illustrious career in beer. Again, that long introduction. We've got a lot to get to today, but welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Wonderful being here.
I got a beer for you. You chose the classic Czech Pilsen, so you can crack that open. That's available at our retail store right now, and it is a fantastic beer. There we go. So you made the long drive from, without giving your location, a couple hours to get here today. You deserve that beer.
Yeah, thank you. It's great so far. Yeah,
I've been looking forward to this chat for some time now. When we were working on the idea for creating Between Two Fermenters, you were the one name that came up right away from Peter Bullitt, from Mike Lackey, from those of us who've been in the industry a long time, and we were like, he's a guy that we need to get on the show. So how are you doing these days?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm not working in a brewery, but I am busier than ever, it seems. I seem to be able to keep myself busy.
That's good.
With all kinds of crazy things.
But you are still hanging around breweries, though?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm not formally involved in any brewery. I've done collabs, and I'm helping out Godspeed with some mechanical stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
So we have a lot to go through today. So I want to start at the beginning because your story needs to be told. I want to help tell it, and I want to go back to the year 1976. So that's the year you arrived in Canada. What brought you here?
Okay, well, my mother was Canadian. My father was half Canadian. And although I grew up in England, Canada was always kind of the second home in a way. I used to spend time in Chester, Nova Scotia in the summers. It's kind of our cottage. When my mother died at a very early age. I was 15 at the time. So I had this sort of increased desire to come to Canada. And when I turned 21, that's what I did. I got on a Polish boat called the Stefan Battery.
Yeah.
And I had my motorcycle in the hold, my old Norton, and I arrived in August of 76.
With a job lined up? Or?
Okay, yes, with a job lined up. Now,
okay. Well, that's what I want to... I interviewed you back in 2011. We're dating ourselves here for an article before my time with Great Lakes. And you mentioned that your grandmother, the Canadian grandmother,
Yes.
it was a Molson.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's pull at that string first. So you came to Canada at 21. Your grandmother was a Molson. That's some pretty cool factoids that...
Yeah, it's pretty... I mean, in her case, it's her father who was probably more significant.
Okay, yep.
My great-grandfather.
Okay.
Because he grew the brewery during the 10s, 20s, and 30s to, significantly large brewery.
Well, that was during the day of the EP Taylors and
absolutely.
just the expansions, yeah.
So I grew up in England, kind of aware of the fact that my relatives, had started a brewery in Canada and it was fairly well regarded. But I must say I didn't, think about it too much.
Yeah.
I was interested in much more in mechanical things and so on. But what I did do is when you arrive in a country, I've called this nepotism in the past, but I've realized that nepotism is only when you gain favor from your relatives at the expense of others.
Okay.
So in this case, what happened was I was given a job at Molson, which is what, kind relatives do, by Eric Molson, who was president of Ontario at the time. You've already mentioned that job was energy and environmental engineer.
Yep.
And that was a completely new position. And I felt quite qualified for that. And evidently they did too. So being British and being stingy with utilities,
So you were working for Molson's 1976. Yeah. You were an energy and environmental engineer. Where was that, in Toronto or was that in Montreal?
It was based in Toronto in what's called the Fleet Street Brewery. Okay. That's the one that on Fleet Street, just outside the CNE. It was one of the most modern breweries in Canada. It was built in 55. Beautifully kept up, maintained, and modernized. By 76, it was really nice brewery. And as I say, still probably the best in Canada.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I started working nationally. I took the same energy management program national, so I traveled around quite a bit. And I did that from an office on Shepherd Avenue in Toronto.
So you were going around to all the different Molson facilities in Canada and putting this programming in place. What was it like working for Molson's back? Because you mentioned your great-grandfather in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and the 50s when the beers were the brewery industry was homogenized it turned out when we got to the 70s and into the early 80s, there's 3 breweries dominating all of Canada. Kind of sounds like it is today, doesn't it? But the 80s, the 70s and 80s in Canadian beer, the stories you hear from those that were there, those were like the heydays of beer. The sponsorships of everything, the parties, what was it like working for Molson's back then?
It was great. I didn't think a whole lot about the fact that it was a large company. I didn't have experience with any other sizes at the time. Yeah. And the engineering side really interested me. And but I do remember. I'm actually going to refer to it in about a week's time at a panel I'm doing in Hamilton.
We're going to talk about that later on today.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you want me to keep this?
No, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Well, talking about heyday.
Well, just this. So, Mr. Hancock here is going to be presenting at the Ontario Craft Brewers Conference this week in Hamilton on, I believe it's the Thursday, about wellness. Wednesday. He's going to be there on Wednesday. So that's in Hamilton, the Ontario Craft Beer. So the heyday, something to do with wellness and...
Well, yeah, what got me to thinking was when you said the heyday, and one of the things that I'm very conscious of, particularly since I've been scanning a bunch of slides recently, is that it was all in compact bottles, everything.
Yeah.
There were no other bottles. And what was the private mold bottle came through a little later, a few years later.
Yeah. So the stubbies.
The stubbies. Yeah, we called them Canadian Compact.
Yeah.
And the sort of philosophy was there was an open fridge or a glass-doored fridge in the cafeteria. You helped yourself to beer.
Yep.
Don't know if anyone was monitoring it. And at the end of the shift, and I did some spells later on as a foreman, supervisor, the guys had to be out of the locker room 45 minutes after their shift had ended. And they had free fridge in there. So you can imagine how many beers they could put back.
The binge drinking.
Yeah. So things have changed a lot.
I was at Labatt in the mid-2000s in Nova Scotia, and even then, that was when the Belgians came in and the Brazilians were getting involved, and they really curtailed a lot of, but the stories we'd hear of, loading the truck up at the loading dock to go to a friend's cottage or whatever. But do you have some fond memories of those years?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful memories. It was great. It was a thrill. In the case of the energy management, it was easy for me. I caught the low-hanging fruit pretty much, which was a huge amount of waste with steam and so on, and basic maintenance of steam systems. And I concentrated on that. And I'm sure the chief engineer thought I was a really annoying little prick coming over from from England. But it was easy to do, and it was very easy for me to, obviously save the company many times my salary at the time. So
you're doing all that. You're the engineer with Molson's, and you're traveling the country, but you get interested in brewing somewhere along the way. So walk me through that next chapter. You get interested. There's an ending with Molson's. There's the Siebel Institute, and you met with the eventual co-founders of Denison's and Bavarian Royalty. So what prompted the change, and how did that change take place?
I have to step back a little bit because I guess I was getting interested in beer. At Molson, you are put through what's called a production training program. So I was taken out of engineering, trained in all other areas of, as a possible manager. Yep. And from that point on, it takes 3 years. From that point on, there's sort of two paths to go. Either you stay with the company or you leave. Okay. And in my case, I think I'd found out enough about the corporate structure that I wasn't very comfortable. And I must say I did one really stupid thing.
Just one?
One that really comes to mind. And I'll try and really cut it short here. But a well-known, engineer there, well-liked, was fired as a sort of fall guy for a project that had gone over budget.
Okay.
And he was fired, and that was a very, very wrong thing to do as far as I was concerned. And I was naive enough to think that I could write to the president of Ontario about that and say, hey, this is wrong. Either hire him back or give a better explanation as to why he's left. Yeah. And he took my letter and gave it directly to the person that had fired him. Oh. Yeah.
Which was your boss?
Which was ultimately, would have been my boss. So that was pretty much the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I don't mind passing that on because it just shows, in the team concept in large companies is fine as long as it doesn't suppress people too much from, voicing their opinion. Yeah. That's always a danger, obviously. But there are limits.
So that happened, and then you obviously said, okay, brewing is the path I'm taking.
Yeah. Basically, I was out. I obviously wondered what the hell I was going to do. I did look around at other industries because, don't forget, I came to Canada not being a brewer. I could have been making ice cream cones maybe in Burlington. But I decided to go to brewing school privately in Chicago in late 1987.
At Siebel.
At Siebel Institute. Yeah.
But was it there that you met?
No. Now we'll fast forward.
Okay. Yeah. So let's get right into it. So, okay. So in 1987, Siebel, you want to be a brewer. Are you, before we even get to the Denison's aspect of it, did you want to open your own place, or did you want to just go and work for Labatt then? Or did you want to go work for another big brewer?
No, I wanted to open something small. Okay. And at that stage, I'd met a number of people, including some people from Molson, and at one stage, we were going to possibly put a brewery in Canmore, Alberta. And
I heard, if I'm not, there was a plan for maybe a brewery in Montreal at one point, and then that's when it...
Well, then what happened was I was at a wedding.
Okay.
And the best man of the groom was this guy called Prince Luitpold von Bayern, Prince Luitpold of Bavaria. And he had been thinking about putting a brew pub, because that was his second business, in Montreal.
Okay.
And I guess he'd heard about me somehow and thought that, here I am, Molson background, in terms of the business. Yeah. Craft breweries were just starting to come about in the States, 87, here too. And it was great evidence that the people who were in craft breweries were doing things that were rather wild and certainly very heavily hopped.
Yep.
And he sensed that I would not be
that person.
I wouldn't screw around with his recipes.
Okay.
And he's right, because I saw they didn't need screwing around with. But anyway, from that point on, we basically suggested he do that in Toronto. And how many years later? 2 years later. 3 years later, we opened on Victoria Street.
So that takes us to 1989. So good segue. Denison's is born. So it involves a Prince, some Molsons, or not Molsons, but Molson.
Even Eric Molson was
Eric
involved.
Molson was involved, yep.
Privately.
And then a German brewery, which was tied to the Prince, and then a historic building. So Prince, I'm going to butcher the name, Prince Luitpold?
No, Luitpold.
Yeah,
Luitpold.
A descendant of Bavarian royalty and owner of the Clattenburg Brewery, which was located in his family's Kaltenberg. See, this is what
cold mountain.
This is why you're here. So he wanted to come to Canada. He wanted something. He partnered up with you, and the partners found 75 Victoria Avenue in Toronto.
That
street.
Yeah.
Okay. And and pedantic. And Denison's is born. So walk us through the startup story.
Well, I was very much the brewer there. I wasn't a partner or anything at that stage, and it was a hell of a job trying to shoehorn this equipment, which was built in Hungary for his company called Hopfen and Malz, Hops and Malt, into this building, and that caused me quite a lot of grief. You could hardly get around the backs of the tanks to clean them.
Well, for anyone who's ever been there and seen them, they're still
tight.
There. It's pretty tight.
Yeah, it's still there, amazingly enough. We opened in November of 89. There was a brewer sent over by him to train me.
Okay.
I think he wanted my job. Anyway, the fact of the matter is we were not brewing his beers under license. We were brewing beers inspired by... So
brand new recipes inspired by the German brands that he was...
It was a private venture of his, not company as such.
And it was made up by... So Denison's was made up of Growler's Pub, Crazy Louie's Brasserie, and Conchy Joe's. So I, unfortunately... was too young to have ever experienced it before. It went away. But can you paint a picture of the space for those of us who have never been able to visit or were never able to visit?
Yeah, it was a Victorian building attached to a 20s hotel. The Victorian building on the corner was the home of one of the better strip bars in the city.
Okay.
Gimlets, it was called. It actually inspired Flashdance, the movie.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And Anyway, so we closed it. So I always felt a bit guilty about that. Anyway, inside, the whole interior had been completely removed and it was all new concrete. But we built a very sort of old, warm kind of space. And the crazy stuff that you referred to came in later.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, because the name Denison's was a dining room upstairs.
Okay.
And the Green Growlers was a bar. So those were the two, that was the division. Denison's had kind of high-end food and was quite frankly a little bit boring, and it didn't do that well.
Okay.
So we thought, what are we going to do to jazz this up a bit? And that's when we asked Prince Leopold if he'd mind if we called it Crazy Louis's Brasserie, referring to his ancestor, Mad King Ludwig. Yeah. And he said, yes, go ahead, which is great. So we did. Didn't last forever. That was phased out later. And we put a oyster bar on the corner, and Fred Luck, a Toronto restaurateur, was heavily involved in the concept there.
And what was the clientele like? Who were you serving beer to? Because this is in craft beer infancy. You're doing German beers in an era of the Granite and Connors and all ale production breweries for the most part. What was it like in serving? Who were you serving to, and what was the feedback on the brands?
I don't know who we were serving to. I never
you never left the brew house.
considered what they did. They almost all became good friends. Yeah. I mean, I can remember one is a brewer who now works in Australia. Another one headed up an insurance company. There were plenty of people came over from Bay Street. There were journalists from Canadian Press down the road. You name it. So it was very mixed. I think German beer, there was a market for German, or let's say continental beer, European beer at that time, and it was very welcome. People seemed to like it. We started actually with a pale lager and a dark lager. The wheat beer did not come in until later.
My crack research team in my head says 1990. Yeah. Summer?
I'll tell you why.
Okay,
So we did something really unusual at the time, which was to serve a draft unfiltered beer that had never been filtered. So we served filtered and unfiltered version of our dark and pale lagers.
Okay.
Four taps. And after a few months, we realized that the dark lager didn't really benefit from being filtered because you couldn't really see that. Yeah. And it looked pretty cool with all the aging anyway. Yeah. So we had a spare tap, and that's when the Germans said, "You will brew Weissbier."
You will brew Weissbier.
That's right, and I'm glad we did because.
It sounds like it because it's gone on to international fame. It was rated #1 in the world for how long? Years.
9 years.
9 years.
By Rate Beer.
Rate Beer, Beer Advocate?
Beer Advocate, fairly high too. I never really monitored that closely.
For the kids listening, this is how we used to see people used to go and rate beers. We have Untapped now where you can do the same thing, but Rate Beer was where it really started. People checking in where they were drinking in, what they were drinking. They would give it scores, and from 2002 to you said 9 years, so 2011, 12. It was the Michael's Denison's Weissbier was rated #1 in the entire world
in the Bavarian Hefeweizen, or the German Bavarian wheat beer category,
which is pretty amazing. I'm interested too, so we're going to get to the beers, but I'm interested in 1989 to get a Brewpub license in Ontario. Can you tell me anything about how difficult that was?
I probably am not the best person to ask, but what I remember was that you could only have a restaurant license or a bar license with what's called a Brewpub endorsement. Now, I don't know when the Brewpub endorsement was created. I would imagine not long beforehand. Granite was a little later than us. And I mean, the people who would have paved the way would have been Amsterdam. Brewing Company, who were there a little earlier.
Rotterdam, I think it was called at the time.
Well, no, Rotterdam came later.
It was Amsterdam, then Rotterdam.
Amsterdam on John Street.
Okay.
Rotterdam on King and Portland.
Okay.
And then Amsterdam Brewing Company.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's a good. No, those. It's funny because whenever I talk about Amsterdam history, I always get. there was this, then there was that, then there was moving, because there was a lot of change in that company over the years. But I know Ron Keefe was very instrumental in getting the Tide House license or the going. So I wasn't sure what was the case with Denison's at the time.
What it meant was there was no beer to be consumed off premise. Period.
Correct. You couldn't sell.
You couldn't take it off premise.
Yeah.
We couldn't. Yeah.
So there was a lot of people that went through Denison's that I can think of. 3 that I know of that went in to beer afterwards. So Ken Woods was one. Ken Woods was a server at Denison's, and then
he certainly was. He was a character.
So tell me a little bit about some of the people that went through Denison's that went on to have a career in beer.
Well, there were a few. I mean, one that comes to mind is Matt O'Hara, who was the brewer at Bose, the founding brewer at Bose.
Yep.
Of course, I go back. Paul Dickey really saved me in a way, because when I get into things, I tend to obsess, and I hadn't taken any time off, and I guess so it was about 91. I don't know when it was, but he came in and he said, "Look, I'd really like to study or whatever with you and take you off for vacations." And I think you covered that when you talked with him last week. But he was a real blessing to me, because he was somebody who was very precise, knew about brewing. I can't say mature, but I mean, wasn't a kid out of school, and I felt I could leave the brewery in his hands when I went away for a couple of weeks in the summer. Yeah, and I found recently the notes that I left for him.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's pages and pages of handwritten stuff, because I couldn't use a keyboard.
And now you're scanning this too, and I can't wait to see your archives.
This is what I'm spending a lot of time on this stuff.
I'm a big geek this way. I love the brewery archive stuff, so I'm going to have to get you to share those notes at one point. So Ken Woods, Paul Dickey, Matt O'Hara, were there any others that went on to... So Ken Woods went on to open up Black Oak in Oakville and then move it to Etobicoke.
Right.
But any other that...
Yeah, Florian von Gutenberg, but you wouldn't know of him. He was a Canadian who went to Australia to brew.
Okay.
Then there was Oliver Gader lately. I mean, around 99, he joined me. He's a chap who I also hired at Side Launch.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Very talented brewer. Very
precise as well. And
okay. So things come to an end in 2003. So Denison's and the 3 pubs, I guess, if you will, or establishments that made up Denison's and the brew house, they ended in 2003. And I've heard you talk about this before, that you guys knew the end was coming. Mm-hmm. But what was going through your head in 2003 when the writing was on the wall that Denison's is going to be no more?
It was a really bad feeling, no question. I mean, we've been around for 14 years. Mm-hmm. Just very briefly here, what happened there was our partners, a couple of them were in property development and were our landlord, and they deliberately set the rent high so the restaurant would not make money. So that had something to do with, income from us versus the offices upstairs. And then unfortunately the building changed hands. And the new landlord kept that arrangement where we didn't make any money.
Okay.
So I remember we made money in 99 and we replaced some carpeting, and that's about it.
Well, we know one thing, that the brew house was never updated there. Now, I know this because I've asked you in the past, but I want you to tell us here today. You were never a fan or a proponent of the name Denison's, yet after the pub closed down, after the brew pub closed down, you kept the name when you kept the beers going. So Well, I thought that would be a dangerous thing to drop. Yeah, quite honestly. So let's get to the part.
I couldn't use growlers, by the way, because growlers had side at the cider company, Growers, which was owned by, I can't remember who, French.
One of the wine companies.
In France, I believe. Anyway, they had challenged us on the use of the word growlers.
Okay.
Back in...
growlers versus growers.
They said it would result in confusion.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but years later we took on their cider, in spite of the bad feelings.
Yep.
And, as an alternative drink. And the number of people who said, "I didn't know you made cider."
Oh yeah,
kind of proved their point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so this was the name Denison's came about how?
He was a mayor of Toronto.
Okay.
We had a partner who was ex Molson, very senior chap. I can say this because he's no longer around, but he was a little straight-laced, let's say.
Okay.
And he came up with a lot of names for the place, and that was one of them, and it was the least bad.
Okay.
Now, there were others that were proposed.
Yeah.
But
was Gimlet's one?
The mash pit was one of them. Actually.
The mash pit. Yeah, okay, that'd be good at Halloween, but maybe not.
But anyway, no. So we lived with it, but I never liked it. No.
Okay, but you kept it when you went on to create your the Weiss beer, the Dunkel.
I thought it would be dangerous to drop it because of the 14 years of association.
So did you jump right into contract brewing right away, like 2003, 2004? And why packaged and not another Brewpub location for you?
Right away. I jumped in right away because Mike Duggan, who was putting together Mill Street with Steve Abrams and Jeff Cooper in the distillery district, had a big open space and they hadn't opened yet. And they said, we'll take as much stuff as you can take out of Denison's as you can legally, and we'll store it for you. And they said, on top of that, we'll give you one of our tanks, and you can brew in it. In this case, it was the wheat beer.
Yep. So
I did that for a few years, draft, kegged for other licensees. Nothing to, we never packaged.
Not packaged, just draft for bars and restaurants. Did you have to go after the name Denison's, or did they just say, "Hey, we're folding. We're going to give this to you"?
Oh no, I was given permission.
You're just given permission.
Yeah. I'd written to
the Prince.
I knew. I also knew other Canadian partners, and I asked their permission, and they said, "Yeah, sure, go for it."
Very good. So, 2003, 2004, you start brewing at Mill Street. And the beer gets out to bars and restaurants. But back in 2003, 2004, there weren't too many places serving craft beer, like licensed establishments. There was the Say What's of the world, but who are you selling beer to?
Say What was definitely
your number one account?
Yeah, and at the time.
Yeah.
But if I may say so, I was doing a little beer tasting at St. Lawrence Center, whatever, around
the market.
Yeah, the market. Only a handful of us, and I was serving the wheat beer, and this family came up. It was a man and a woman and two young boys, and he said, "I run a bar on Yonge Street, Italian restaurant. And we're thinking of getting into craft beer. Would you mind if I put on your Denison's wheat beer?" And I said, "Sure, that's great." And he did. And he said, from the moment he put the sandwich board outside, things changed for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Ralph
Morana.
And,
happy belated birthday, Ralph. It was his birthday yesterday. Yep.
Thank you, Ralph. And Julian and Thomas. With the children.
Well, that's a great story because he really put Toronto on the map with his
run with it.
Yes, and the Academy of Spherical Arts. Like, who else was selling the beer back then, if you can recall?
God, I can't remember.
Yeah, they're Smokeless Joe, maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure, Smokeless Joe's. Yeah, whichever ones you I'll correct you if any of yours are wrong. Put it that way. Yeah.
So you went from Mill Street, but then you went to Black Oak. Is that how that went?
No, Black Oak supplemented Mill Street at first because I needed to brew the dark lager as well, and Ken could do that for me. Okay. And I only had one tank at Mill Street, so it had to rotate with the same beer, otherwise you had a problem. And I should mention that at that stage I got into big trouble with the AGCO because a person who is doing a brand under contract was not actually meant to be involved in the brewing process at that time. And
it's funny that you say that, because you've told me this before. You've told me this story. That's why I said every batch that you were stoically positioned over the mash tun with your rubbers and stuff on, because you didn't care. You wanted to control your brands.
Well, I had a story, and that was I was giving these place's mechanical advice, and that's why I was into, as the maintenance guy, and I just happened to be interested in the brewing part as well.
And it's funny how today, if you're a contract, if your beers are being contracted at someone else's establishment, no one knows who the brewer is. It could be anyone in there brewing.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And we also weren't allowed to deliver it either, and that's how they really caught me.
Oh, yeah. So then
I would drive
the
around.
host brewery would have to deliver. Okay.
But I was driving around town in a 1986 VW Jetta.
And doing the deliveries, you and Bruce Halstead in County Durham. But so that law has changed as well, too. So if you're a contract brewer, you can obviously deliver your own product from whoever's brewing your beer. So maybe you were instrumental in that, yapping too much?
Not actively.
Not actively, yeah. So... then you went to Black Oak and Mill Street, but I know you've worked with a couple other breweries in Ontario over the years. Can you name some of the ones in your past?
Absolutely. I mean, all from Black Oak, things started to roll.
Yeah.
I mean, we were still tiny, but
and did you get into package then? Or?
No, absolutely not.
So let's get to
next. I got into Cool.
Okay.
Brewing.
Cool and
that was like a wide open door for me because he had a lot of tankage. I put together a contract with Bobby.
Yep.
And I had this 3-page contract. And which I'd written, very proud of, and he said, I don't do contracts.
Yeah.
And signed a napkin or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the way that went.
Yeah.
But at Cool, I might have got into cans.
Okay.
But they were having trouble with the can filler that they got. And I had mocked up bottles as well to run on their line, but that never happened. Amsterdam was the next place that I heard had capacity. So I went to Amsterdam, and they were already canning. So that was an immediate way in.
So you took all your production over to Amsterdam?
I think I might have been brewing at Cool and Amsterdam for a while.
Because I know that's where I met you for the first time. Would have been at Amsterdam when you had moved over there at their old location at Bathurst and Queens Quay area.
Absolutely.
And then from Amsterdam, where'd you go after that?
Well, Amsterdam had some kind of trouble, or maybe it was Cool, and I did a canning run at Great Lakes as well.
Yeah, I remember hearing that story, but that's kind of, and you probably had trouble at the canning line at Great Lakes back in those days.
No, I can't remember. It worked out for me anyway.
That's good. And so you started canning your beer, that would have been 2009, 10?
Yeah, 2009.
Okay. And you went to the LCBO with it, and it went well, took off?
Yeah, it went well.
And
I mean,
you focused on.
I was unfortunately very constrained with production, so I couldn't grow very quickly.
And you focused on the Weiss beer over the Dunkel, or did you go
mainly the wheat beer, but Dunkel as well? Yeah.
Why'd you?
But no, wait a second. The Dunkel was never packaged.
It was never packaged.
No,
never. Just kegs.
No.
So why'd you choose the Weiss beer to keg to can?
I think I saw at that stage, actually probably earlier on, I saw a huge opportunity
because there was no one else doing
full wheat beer. In Canada, and I quite frankly I still do. I think it's a wonderful beverage. But anyway, so I was tiny. To put things in perspective, I think I did about 1,000 hectoliters a year. Which is not much. Yeah,
but you were having fun.
Yeah.
Brewing
and
what
I was
you
supporting
wanted to do.
Supporting one family. Put it that way. Yeah.
Now your commitment to quality is legendary. Like it is legendary. You just said once your engineering brain gets into something, like you're so focused on it. But that commitment to quality has led to a lot of awards and ratings. Like we said, #1 rated Weiss beer, Bavarian German Weiss beer in the world. What does quality mean to you, and why is it so important in craft beer?
Quality is consistency first. And quality is also not producing something that people find unpleasant to drink. But in my approach, it's always been to do a lot of cleaning and to use the best ingredients I can get my hands on, and to respect, existing recipes. I mean, they're there for a reason. So that's really all I can say. I mean, at the same time, as time went by, I knew how to run a lab, right, and do analysis.
So you're doing Denison's contract brewing. with all these different breweries over the year from 2003 to essentially 2014. Yes. Now we're going to get into the side launch era, where a brewery opened in Collingwood, but there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes in a garage in Cabbagetown. But before we get into that, I want to tell one story about you that I find so memorable that I actually tell it over and over again to people when someone says, "Oh, do you want a slice of orange on your beer, or do you want a slice of lemon?" So, audience, back in the day, Bar Volo on Yonge and Dundonald Street in Toronto used to do these Monday night happy hours, I guess you'd call them, and you could go and get $4 pints. I can remember this. This would have been about 2008 to 2012-ish, around that time. And it would always generate a lot of the regulars would come in on Monday after work, a lot of brewers, a lot of people in the industry, and they'd come in. And this one time, Mr. Hancock comes in, and we're all kind of congregated around the bar, and he goes up and he orders his famous Denison's Weiss beer. And as they're pouring, he goes, "I'm just going to go to the bathroom." So he goes downstairs. When he comes up, we had convinced them to put a lemon in his beer. And your face to that day, I can remember this, that you're like, and the expletives that were coming in going, if I wanted my beer to taste like lemon, I would have put lemon in it. And I just wanted to tell that story for the audience because
it's probably, that one's true. Yeah.
I can remember it as if it was yesterday, because we all of us around the bar had a good joke at your expense. Okay. So 2014, Denison's going strong as a contract. You're doing 1,000 hectoliters a year, and someone tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Come brew beer in our garage. Let's get this brewery up and running in Collingwood," which would eventually become Side Launch. How did you get involved, and walk us through the history of that?
A little correction there, if you don't
mind. Okay.
So it was around 2010 that I was first introduced to these people.
2010.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to make it clear that I did not look for financing to get bigger. They approached me, and I think there's a significant difference there. Okay. Anyway, so now this garage thing did happen, but not the way you're suggesting.
Oh no!
No, we already planned.
So I heard from someone else.
Planning, and we went through. We were well underway with planning and architectural stuff and everything else. And Evan and Garnet Siddle were the sort of the main partners, the ones at least who were keenly interested.
They were the most
in beer.
Front-facing people.
They were they were really interested in beer, and they said, "Look, this is fine. These German beers, people like them and so on, and they do well. But if you're going to brew for us, you have to brew a pale ale. That would be an American pale ale.
Yeah,
something like Sierra Nevada." And so that's when I said, "Well, I don't have anywhere to brew it right now." And they said, "Well, we've got a garage in a house in Cabbagetown," and that's where we set up the pilot plant that we bought. And I brewed there for 2 or 3 months, I guess. And I was pretty pleased with the results, and they were too. Yeah.
I actually did a beer tasting for them in that Cabbagetown residence.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
For something that they were doing in the community. And I knew about these plans before it was going bigger than what it eventually became. So they tapped you. You started brewing the pale ale to develop that, but you also had the 3 beers that you brought over from your catalog. The Weiss beer.
Actually, it was only 2 at the time.
Only 2, Dunkel and Weiss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were there from 2014 to how long?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
But what's your proudest moment there? Because in 2016, we were all in this room and you guys won the Brewery of the Year at the Canadian Brewing Awards. And it was like the cherry on the top for you, in my opinion, that you're clean, and don't take offense to this. This in 2016 was the year that a lot of breweries were just adding hops to everything, and just big IPAs and pale ales were selling really well. And you won it on these clean German style beers. How did that make you feel?
Oh, that's the definition of being pleased. Yeah, for sure it is. We actually the great thing about the Canadian Brewing Awards at that time was that all all your merit was based on blind judging of your beer.
Yeah.
It wasn't on, I don't know, PR or community outreach and stuff like that.
It was all based on...
It was all about the beer. And so we were thrilled with that. I actually, part of that whole package, because you get you get the award based on the number of golds, silvers, and bronzes you get.
You get points based on each one,
It was, we had a triple. Yeah, so that's...
Triple gold?
No, a triple Belgian. Yeah.
A
Belgian
that,
triple.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had ventured out beyond German by that stage.
So that, in 2016, you guys won that. And I think, again, like I'm saying, we were in the room and we were seeing you get up there, and this is a big deal. Someone recognized, I know you've been recognized by Casa and Ray and Bar Towel Golden Top Awards. But I think on, the people who've been in the industry a long time, it was just something really great to see. Now, it's no secret, though, that things with Side Launch they didn't go the best at the end before it was purchased by Equals. And I don't want to dwell on it, but I have a couple things I want to ask you about that. When the new owners, or after Garnet was out, is it a true story that when the big change that was internally happening at Side Launch, I heard you're asked by some shareholders, is it true that you refuse to brew anything other than German-style beers? To which you said no. After a sigh of relief or some rumblings, you clarified, I only brew Bavarian-style beers. Is that true?
Either I have wiped that completely from my memory, or it's not true.
Okay.
No, I mean, I was known for being reluctant to brew what we called flavor of the day beers. Because I think they are very short-lived and they don't breed brand loyalty. And if, there are so many wonderful beer styles out there, why can't you just concentrate on a few of them? Now, thankfully, there are not too many of me around, and there are others. But no, I would never have said that.
Well, again, back to your commitment. Your commitment was so legendary. It's still legendary in this industry that I remember visiting Side Launch and seeing a cot in your office, the brewer's office, in case it ever snowed. Too bad in Collingwood. Like you were all in on this company.
It was there for a much more important reason, and that is that I had nowhere to live.
Okay.
And I couldn't commute
back and forth.
I commuted weekly for a while, and even that was a pain. We were looking for a house up in Collingwood.
But the hours you're putting in is what I'm trying to say.
And it also avoids drinking and driving.
There you go. I wish I could have come to a party with you. So the new owners came in.
They weren't new owners. They were the same owners, but a new CEO.
CEO.
Yeah.
That's when Garnet was gone.
Yes.
Okay. So is there anything you want to share about that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's nobody likes dirty laundry, and it's very unprofessional. But in this case, there are a few things that happened that were very clear-cut, and I'll leave the listeners to be the judges.
Okay.
When Garnet was let go and they're looking for a new CEO, I was aware of the people that they were looking for, the shortlist, and one of them was somebody I had met, and quite senior chap. Anyway, I won't get into that. And I basically decided that he would very much be the wrong person to run the brewery. So I told the board that discreetly, and then they hired him. So they had a problem, because I was the founding brewer, and I told them not to hire this guy. So what they did was they banned me from entering the brewery for a period of 2 months.
That was your punishment for speaking out?
That was my punishment for, it's whatever. It was their way of solving the issue, so he could get comfortable. Yeah. If that's not weird. I mean,
it's very weird.
Yes, it's very weird. And, of course, I was very quiet about that for a fair amount of time, say 2 or 3 years, but it's enough time's gone by.
Disrespectful, too.
Yeah. And then when I returned, I was no longer an employee and an owner. I was still an owner, but on a contract. And my contract was working for the guy that I had told them not to hire.
To do what?
To be an ambassador.
Just to do...
Which was actually my suggestion.
To do like public appearances, or
just to push the brands. Okay. But there's so many details I can't get into here because of time. But just to show how crazy it got, they approached me at one stage, 3/4 of the way through this 1-year contract, and said, "You have to take the name Brewer off your business card." And I said, because my card said founding brewer.
Yeah.
And I said, why? That's crazy. Well, they said, well, you can leave it on there if you put retired after it. And I said, well, I'm not retired. I'm still working for the brewery. And I said, what is this, like a military, general so-and-so retired? Anyway.
They must have really thought you had control over the whole company.
Anyway, I refused to take brewer off my card.
Yep.
I said, it's a profession. It's not a position in a business. And thankfully, I'd just been over to the Czech Republic, and I'd met the head of the retired brewer from Czechvar.
Okay.
And his business card said Brewer Emeritus.
Okay.
And I said, bingo.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's it. So I said, this is what you're going to put on my card, and they never printed them before my departure.
Before your departure.
And they did not renew my contract.
Well,
anyway, I want to say there are a couple of weird little.
Yeah. On behalf of everyone who loves what you've done over the past 30, 40 years, it's a raw deal. It sucks. No, to pivot to some nicer news, the new owners that came in, Equals, Justin McKellar, it would seem that these guys have reached out to you, and in a post on Instagram in 2023 March, Side Launch owes a debt of gratitude to Michael Hancock, whose brewing skills and groundbreaking wheat beer recipe, crafted during his tenure at Denison's Brewery, have earned worldwide acclaim as some of the best of its kind. The impact of his contribution to Side Launch cannot be overstated, and we are humbled by the solid foundation he has established. And then last year in 2024, or this year, but earlier this year, to mark their 10th anniversary, they brought you back to brew the original pale ale recipe.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't brought back as an employee or anything, but I did a collaboration.
Yeah.
And there are some people out there who know that I'm not a great fan of collaborations.
I've heard this before.
But to me, if they're very significant, I'll do them. And so I've done some with Luke, as you know, Godspeed. So what we did with Bernardo, the brewer there, is and he said this, I want you to brew the pale ale again, because pale ale had been axed early on in
the evolution of
and so, but thankfully, so that Mountain Lager could come on, which is another beer I'd produced for years. So anyway, we did the pale ale, and it was very well received, apparently. So,
and how does it make you feel now? Do you that this has changed and Side Launch wants to still?
I'm delighted that I have a place that I can go to close to home on Tuesdays usually, and have a nice fresh wheat beer.
Do you go back and ever talk to the brewer? What's the brewer's name? Sorry,
Bernardo,
and say, "Hey, man, this wheat beer is not pulling its weight."
No, I got to be really careful with that kind of stuff. They're doing a great job.
Yeah,
and he's a great guy.
Good.
And anyway, so it's a good feeling, and it feels like somebody else owns it, and I don't have ownership, which is unfortunate. But
So looking back, if you could say one thing about Side Launch, what are you most proud of when you pull back the curtains of your time at Side Launch?
I think without a doubt that 2016 award. Yeah, it was fantastic to get it. I mean, what I haven't said throughout this, and I'll be as quick as I can, is the growth rate at that place was insane.
Yeah,
we started at 5,000 hectoliters. Next year was 8,000. Next year was 10,000. Next year was 12,000, and we were always buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tanks.
And that's amazing to hear, because I don't know if it was just the year you got into it, the brands, the sales team that was put together. I know a lot of people were questioning, well, why is Garnet leaving? Because the brewery's actually, it seems like it's doing well, but
not making money.
But not making money. Because there was a lot of people trying to move that product too, I think. But it seemed like Side Launch was created with a lot of money, and then it took off, but it just never took off. in the realm of like design and just Ontario wide appreciation. The beers they spoke for themselves, and I think that's what I'm saying. The 2016 award for best brewery in Canada, I think that really showed what you had contributed all those years in the brewing industry. Today, if you, and I want to ask you kind of the same question, looking back, not just what are you proud of when you were at Side Launch, but if you were to pull back the curtain on your entire career in beer, what would you be the most proud of? It's a very loaded question.
It sure is.
I am known for these hard hitting.
Well, I think there's no question that the wheat beer, even though there was a reason for it being highly rated, and I won't get into that, we don't have time. The wheat beer, I'm very proud of that. Yeah. Really proud of it.
And people can still find it.
And I still think it's a great, great beer. And that's kind of what I've been trying to tell equals.
Yeah.
Don't get blinded by sort of trends or whatever. The wheat beer is a winner. But
have you ever thought about coming back with Denison's?
No. I mean, when you've put the effort that I have into the brands, the company, the small company that they bought, building Side Launch, I couldn't do it again.
Yeah.
And besides, right now it's not a great climate to start a brewery.
No, it's not. So we have covered a lot here, Michael, and we've captured your past, which I'm extremely thankful for personally. And from an industry perspective, I think we all can say that. It's nice to get you here and talk about it. But let's talk about what's next. You said you're not involved in any brewery. You're helping out, here and there at Godspeed with some mechanical stuff. But is Michael Hancock done with brewing?
No, I'm doing more collaborations in the last 5 years than I ever did in my entire life.
So you're using that new card, that new title, Brewer
Emeritus
to get around?
I haven't got any cards.
Okay, so when are we going to do? When are we going to do a beer?
I'm basically helping out a number of breweries, but in particular, Godspeed.
Yeah.
I have mechanical skills that are there as well. Luke certainly does not need any brewing skills there.
Yeah.
He's got Jeff as well. Yeah. So, and no, I mean, I would love more income, quite frankly, and I'd love ownership in something that is growing, but that's not the case right now. And I'm sort of getting ready to. No, I'm going through a lot of stuff that I was never able to do so when I was brewing.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely didn't give my family the attention they do. They still will say that I still don't anyway. But the point is that I'm going through all those memorabilia, boxes, slides, you name it. Unbelievable amount of stuff that I never had a chance to organize.
Well, if people want to follow you on Instagram, it's the Brewer55.
Yes.
All right, you should check it out because it's got some pretty great pictures on there of Sleeman's. We were talking about this on the way over. Sleeman's before the brewery was even built, just the dug up field, the empty field, and Creemore, a picture of Creemore Brewery that says opening August 5 or August 15th or something like that. Yeah. So go check that out because that's the stuff. I really love that stuff. And okay, so we're going to hear an ad. We're going to have another sip of beer. When we come back, we're going to get into rapid fire questions. You good with that?
Yeah. I mean, I have thought about some of these. And
all right.
I'm going to be in trouble.
So let's take a sip and we'll be right back.
Hey, craft beer lovers, ready to show off your passion? Let me introduce you to Hop Bomb Apparel Company. This isn't just another t-shirt brand. Hop Bomb puts the same care and detail as a master brewer into every design, crafting each tee with original beer-inspired graphics, using premium fabrics and small batch screen printing methods. So whether you're visiting your local brewery, hitting up a beer festival, or just hanging out with friends, show off your love for craft beer and style with Hop Bomb Apparel. And right now, you can get 10% off your order with the code FERMENT10 at checkout. So check out hopbombapparel.ca and find your next favorite beer drinking tea.
So we're back with Mr. Hancock for some rapid fire questions. Michael, what beer have you been enjoying recently?
I will say O'Hara's Stout.
Okay.
That's a surprising one. It's based on a recommendation from Stephen Beaumont. I'm definitely in Godspeed on a regular basis. I love their beers.
Okay.
True History as well. Is that
I
enough?
haven't been to True History yet. Yeah, I got to go. Name your celebrity doppelganger.
Okay, well, I was really screwed with that one. You sent me that at midnight last night.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for me being up until 2 a.m. Anyway, I went on Celebrity, whatever it is, app, which I didn't have to pay for. Max Weber, 2 times Michael Dell. I don't know who these people are. I don't know. Simon Baker, Neil Horan. And there's one picture I put on where I think I look a little bit like George Clooney.
Okay, we'll go with George Clooney.
So I put that on, and I was not successful. I got Justin Timberlake.
All right.
You can believe that. So there you go.
Name a person or brewery in the industry that has or continues to inspire you.
I would honestly say Luc Lafontaine, because he comes up with ideas and he just follows through with them. And he's very gutsy. The fact that he approached Pilsner Urquell and Czech Var is incredible. We both came back from Czech Republic the same year, and I had no brewery to brew in, and he did, and he just ran with it, you know.
Yeah, you two share some similarities in what I perceive as work ethic and commitment to quality, and you're very on when you like you said, when you have something in your head, you do it, you go with it.
Yeah, I'm more of a micro scale and he's macro.
Yeah. Okay. Best time and place for a beer.
Oh God, I don't know. Whenever you really want one.
Okay. Favorite German brewery.
I would say it's one that I'm not able to get to very often. And that is the Monastery Brewery, Undex. Undex, near in Hersching, which is near Munich.
I'm going to give a shout out to our friends over at Rittmeyer Brewery from 1622.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. How many breweries have you visited in your life?
No idea. Probably not as many as a number of people.
Yeah.
I mean, no, because I don't actually do a lot around in North America.
Okay.
Europe maybe, but I'm sure in excess of 100. I don't know.
If you could only drink one beer for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It would be a wheat beer.
Yours?
No, it doesn't have to be mine, as long as it's good.
Okay.
I'm constantly amazed by how wheat beer can not rejuvenate you, but satisfy you.
So like a Rickard's Red? Or I mean a Rickard's Rickard's White?
White? No.
Belgian Moon?
No, don't need any orange juice.
Favorite place to grab a beer in Toronto?
Best place?
Yeah.
I'm going to say Godspeed.
Godspeed?
Yeah.
Favorite bar in the world? So this could be anything.
No,
you have nothing in Germany? Like drinking in a castle in Germany?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. The bar in the walls of Prince Leopold's castle.
That's what I would go with.
Yeah, that's right. On the other side of the moat.
And the very last question, best hangover cure?
Tons of water and just get on with your day.
Okay.
You can't sit around moping.
Well, that's my detriment. I do that. So, Michael, Mr. Hancock, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today to share your story with us. I appreciate it very much. You've done so much for the industry for so many years, inspired so many. And the beers that you've created, truly world-class. And I wish I was sitting here drinking them today from that fancy-ass Denison's Weiss beer glass that you created way back in the mid-2000s, which I still have in my basement to this day. So thank you very much for coming on. It's a great honor to spend an hour and a bit with you.
Thank you, Troy. It's been a real pleasure.
Cheers.
Good to see you again.
Cheers.
At Bossa Nova, we have more than 400 products you won't find at the LCBO. Our craft beer comes from local faves and legendary producers like Driefonteinen, Bruton, and Hitachino. Our wines are the ones sommeliers bring into better restaurants, rarely available to take home. We have Basque cider, Normandy cider, Italian, Californian, as well as the finest from Ontario. Next door, relax and enjoy our outstanding selection in the newly opened Bar Bossa Nova. Bossa Nova in Roncesvalles Village. We've got a lot of stuff you're gonna love.
Cole's Notes. He's back and he's ready to wow you with some beer history. Take it away, Cole.
Thanks, Troy. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Cole's Notes segment. So today, while we're recording, it is Halloween. So instead of doing a segment about beer science, I decided to talk about something a bit more Halloween-y, witches. So you may be wondering, what do witches have to do with beer? Well, there are theories that many popular tropes in iconography related to witches may actually be related to female brewers in the 16th century. I do want to note that as I went deeper down the rabbit hole researching this topic, that there have been many rebuttals to parts of this theory. And as a person of science, I take spreading misinformation very seriously. So I'll do my best to avoid any contested topics. Did you know that up until the 16th century, most brewers were women? Brewing was a popular method of consuming and preserving grains, which contained vital sources of carbohydrates and nutrients. So it fell on women as a common household task to prepare home brews for consumption by their families. As I spoke about in a previous episode, many times it was also a more sanitary option than drinking water to drink low-alcohol ale. So how does this tie into witches? Well, it is thought that during the Reformation period, when the Protestant Church broke off from the Catholic Church in Europe, that women brewers were targeted in an intentional smear campaign. From brooms being used to sweep up pervasive grain dust, to cats helping with pest control, to cauldrons used to transport ales to locations of consumption. This was all common imagery associated with witches. It was even said that Germanic women would brew in huts in the forest to avoid Holy Roman invaders. Hansel and Gretel, anyone? But what motive did the church have for ousting these female brewers? Well, their main competitors at the time were the Catholic monasteries famous for their brewing monks. And while some of these icons, such as the pointy hats, may have been disproven as being connected to brewing, the fact still stands that many women, including those in lower economic status who sold their ales to make ends meet, were wrongfully labeled as witches, and they paid for it with their lives. It's a stain on our history that we have hopefully learned from. Who knew that history could taste so bitter?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a bummer topic today, but
see, Cole's always here with the wow stuff that we don't know. Cole brings to us. So thanks, Cole. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. Have a happy Halloween, guys.
Around the industry.
Only a couple things to cover for this Around the Industry segment. It's that time of the year when hundreds of brewing representatives from across Canada arrive in Ontario to attend the annual OCB conference. It's in Hamilton. It's this week. It's Wednesday and Thursday. And as we heard, Michael, he's going to be there on Wednesday to do a session. I am going to be there. I have a couple sessions that I'm involved with Peter Bullitt, the owner and president of Great Lakes. He's going to talk about the good and the bad of the brewing industry over 37 years. I'm also going to be talking with Jody Pawlowski, the president of the Charcoal Group, president and CEO of the Charcoal Group, who runs the 11 Beertown locations across Ontario. That's Wednesday and Thursday, so keep an eye out for that. It's Canada's largest brewing trade show, tons of sessions and networking, and of course, a lot of craft beer. If you follow me on Instagram, at Troy Birch, you'll find some fun behind-the-scenes stories as well. Some unfortunate news. Again, it seems like I'm always bringing bad news on the Around the Industry, but the Growler magazine that we talked about recently here, who had said that they were moving online, will actually now quietly cease operations at the end of November. So really unfortunate, as it was really the last printed magazine devoted to showcasing the industry and giving passionate beer people a platform to write. So hopefully Jordan St. John will continue his bi-weekly news and notes column, if you will, somewhere else on the interwebs. A number of breweries, including GLB, were recently in Ottawa with the Coalition of Canadian Independent Craft Breweries, that's a mouthful, to continue lobbying the federal government on modernizing excise tax. A number of great meetings were had with both bureaucrats in finance and with MPs. Our lobbying played a massive part in the federal government making some changes last spring with a 50% reduction on excise tax for breweries in the 0 to 15,000 hectoliter category. So more on that to come. We're going to keep pushing that on a federal level. And in provincial politics, just a friendly reminder to head over to savelocalcraftbeer.ca and create a very fast letter to your local MPP. There's templates there. You just plug in your postal code and it generates a letter. Tax talk is boring, but any reform to the way in which Ontario breweries calculate and pay taxes, which, by the way, is the highest in the country, will help create more jobs, create more economic impacts for communities, and so much more. So we thank you in advance. And that's it. That's all, folks. Episode 22 with Mr. Michael Hancock. Da Bräuer has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. Today's episode was fueled by cans of our Vienna Lager and the classic Czech Pilsner, which you can find online at greatlakesbeershop.ca or at both GLB retail store locations. Also, keep an eye out for both of them on tap at terrific beer bars across Ontario. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke or grab some delicious eats. The Detroit style pizza, anyone? Or fresh pours at our Brewpub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street, Toronto. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, guest ideas, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com and follow Mr. Michael Hancock on Instagram at thebrewer55. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.